If you have $500,000 sitting in your super, you probably think you only have two real choices: stick with an industry fund or set up a self-managed super fund. But there is a third option most people have never even heard of, something called a super platform. And right now it is quietly pulling in billions of dollars from retirees across the country every year. Here is the number that matters. A platform can look like it costs 0.5 to 1% a year, about the same as an industry fund. But once you stack the advisor fee on top, then the transaction costs, then the spread the platform earns on your cash account, that number can climb to 2.5%. On a $500,000 balance, that is $12,500 a year, more than double what a lean, do-it-yourself super fund can cost running the same portfolio. I have watched people find this out by accident, years after they signed up, when they finally sat down and added every line on the statement together. In this video, I am going to show you exactly where that extra cost hides, and the point where a platform stops being worth it and starts working against you without you noticing. Get this wrong over 10 years, and you can hand over more than $100,000 in fees you never needed to pay. If you are close to retirement and have never even heard the words super platform, hit subscribe now, because most advice out there will never walk you through the real cost of this option. A super platform gives you something an industry fund never really does: direct control. You can hold individual shares, exchange traded funds, term deposits, whatever you want, inside one account, but it is not the one fee deal it is sold as. An industry fund usually charges somewhere around 0.5 to 1% all in, and that is it. One number covers everything. A platform starts with a base admin fee in that same 0.5 to 1% range. Then a financial advisor adds their own ongoing fee, often another 0.5 to 1%, plus a small percentage on every trade, plus a spread the platform earns on the cash sitting in your account. Add it up on a $500,000 balance, and the total can land near 2.5%, which is $12,500 a year. Now here is the part that changes the picture. That $12,500 is not the number to compare against an industry fund. It is the number to compare against a lean, do-it-yourself super fund, the kind run through an online administrator rather than a full service accounting firm. For a simple portfolio of shares and ETFs with no property and no complicated structure, that kind of fund can run for somewhere around $2,000 a year. At $500,000, that is roughly $10,500 a year sitting on the table, money that is not buying you better returns, just a more comfortable way to hold the same investments. Why does the platform cost so much more? Because you are paying for three separate services stacked on top of each other: the platform's technology and reporting, the advisor's ongoing relationship, and the trading and cash management underneath it. An industry fund bundles all of that into one number because it pools everyone's money together. A platform unbundles it. And unbundled things almost always cost more once every piece gets added back up. Y6's own consumer guidance on MoneySmart says something similar in plain language. A platform's fees can include an administration fee, an investment fee, and an advice fee, and you should always ask to see the full breakdown before you commit to one. That matters because most people only ever see the first number, the headline admin fee, and assume that is the whole story. I want to be fair to the tax office for a moment too. The Australian Taxation Office does publish average running costs for self-managed super funds, and its own data shows the typical fund spends around $7,000 a year on operating costs alone, sometimes more once you add investment and advice fees. That number matters because it tells you the $2,000 figure only applies to the leanest, simplest setup, not to every SMSF you will ever hear about. A platform is not automatically the expensive option, and an SMSF is not automatically the cheap one. It depends entirely on how complicated you make it. If you have ever felt like the finance industry hides the true cost of these products until it is too late to easily undo, you are not imagining it. Every platform has to give you a fee schedule if you ask for one directly. Most people never see it, simply because nobody hands it over unless you ask. Here is the trade-off underneath all of this. Pay 2.5% instead of 0.5% for 20 years on a growing balance, and you are not just losing this year's $10,500. You are losing every year of growth that money would have earned if it had stayed invested, instead of leaving your account as a fee. That gap keeps growing in the background, the same way a car rego renewal still turns up every single year, whether you drove the car often or barely touched it. But that 2.5% number is still only half the story. There is a way to read your own fee schedule in about 60 seconds and know immediately whether you are being looked after or quietly taken for a ride. That is what most advisors hope you never learn to do. So, how do you actually put a number on all of this instead of guessing? Add four things together: the platform's admin fee, the advisor's ongoing fee, the transaction and trading costs, and the spread on your cash account. Whatever that total comes to, compare it against what a lean SMSF would cost for the same shares and ETFs. That comparison, not the headline number on the brochure, is your real answer. I used to think any fee under 1% counted as cheap. Then I sat down with a client who had a $400,000 platform account advertised at a 0.7% fee. Once we added his advisor fee and the trading costs on top, his true cost came to 1.9%, which was $7,600 a year, not the $2,800 the brochure implied. I felt a bit foolish for not catching that sooner, and it changed how carefully I read every fee sheet since. This does not mean a platform is always the wrong call. If you have $300,000 and want the lowest effort option, a straightforward industry fund is probably still your best move. If you have $800,000 and want to hold direct shares and ETFs without taking on the SMSF paperwork yourself, a platform can still make sense, but only if you negotiate the advisor fee down and check the cash spread carefully. The number that decides it for you is not the size of your balance. It is whether the total cost, once every piece is added up honestly, comes in below what a lean SMSF would cost for the same job. That comfort is not free, even when markets are flat and nothing much seems to be happening in your account. A platform can feel safer because someone else is watching things for you, but that reassurance carries a price tag every single year, market up or market down. Over 20 years, the gap between a fair fee and an inflated one is not a rounding error. It is the difference between retiring with a buffer and retiring without one. So how do you actually know whether your advisor is charging you a fair number instead of a padded one? There is a document every platform is required to give you that spells it out in plain figures. That fee sheet is easier to find than most people expect, and I want to walk you through exactly where it lives. Zoom out for a moment and look at how these choices play out over decades, not years. Back in 2008, during the global financial crisis, most industry balanced funds fell by around 20% before recovering over the following few years. People holding concentrated portfolios, especially heavy in bank shares, often fell further and took longer to climb back. A platform does not remove that risk on its own, but it does let you spread across more shares, ETFs, and asset types than most industry fund menus allow if you actually use that flexibility instead of paying for it and leaving it unused. On the return side, the numbers are less dramatic but still worth knowing. Since compulsory super began in 1992, the median growth superannuation fund has returned around 8% a year on average. A well-built platform portfolio can sit in that same range, sometimes a little above it, sometimes a little below, depending entirely on what you actually hold inside it. The platform itself does not create extra return. It only gives you the room to build one, at a cost. Think about what that means over a full retirement. The structure you pick today is not a one-year decision. It shapes your income for the next 20 or 30 years. The gap between paying 2.5% and paying 0.5% is not a one-off cost either. It repeats every single year, and over decades that becomes tens of thousands of dollars that could have gone toward travel, grandkids, or simply a bit more breathing room. But even once the structure is right, the biggest risk left standing is not the fee. It is the part where most retirees freeze up and avoid the decision altogether because they are scared of getting it wrong. That is worth talking about honestly, because it is completely normal. There is a reason so many people stick with the industry fund, and it is not laziness, it is comfort. You do not have to make decisions. You do not have to check a screen. The same percentage gets deducted automatically, and it feels safe, precisely because you never have to think about it. The cost of that comfort is that you might be sitting inside a menu that no longer fits your situation, and you would not necessarily know it. On the other side, some people avoid platforms and SMSFs altogether because they are scared of becoming the kind of person who obsesses over spreadsheets every weekend. That is a completely reasonable thing to want to avoid. You have worked hard for decades. The last thing you want in your 60s is a second unpaid job managing your own money. I get that. And I want to be clear about something. Wanting simplicity does not mean you are behind, and it does not mean you are doing this wrong. It just means the fee question has not been asked yet, not that you have failed to ask it. Here is the one shift that changes things, and it takes about a minute, not a weekend. Ask one question. What is my total cost per year all in? Not the admin fee alone, not the headline number in the brochure. The full figure after every piece is added together. That single answer tells you almost everything you need to know about whether the setup you are in is still worth what it costs. I once worked with a woman who spent 3 months comparing platforms. She printed out every fee sheet, highlighted the numbers in different colors, and built a spreadsheet most accountants would be proud of. She finally picked one, then discovered months later that the advisor fee had been sitting in a footnote she had skipped over. That is exactly why I tell people to start with the fee sheet itself, not the marketing brochure sitting on top of it. That fee sheet is easier to find than you might think, and the number that actually matters takes less than a minute to read once you know where to look. Here is exactly how to check your own situation in 3 steps. Step 1. Look at the comparison page on the ATO's website. It lays out administration fees and investment fees side by side for different funds, using standardized figures so you are comparing apples with apples. It will not show you any advisor fee sitting on top, because that is a separate, private arrangement between you and your advisor. For that number, you have to ask directly. Step 2. Request the standard fee schedule from whoever manages your platform. Every platform is required to give you one, spelling out the administration fee, the fee for any advice attached, and the cost of trading and cash management. Ask your advisor one direct question. Can you show me the total annual cost, including the platform fee, your fee, and every transaction cost, all added together? If they hesitate, or talk around the number instead of writing it down for you, treat that as a signal worth paying attention to. Step 3. Work out your break-even point. Take your balance and multiply it by the total percentage from step 2. Compare that dollar figure against what a lean, do-it-yourself SMSF would cost for the same simple portfolio, somewhere around $2,000 a year if you are only holding shares and ETFs. If your platform's total cost comes in meaningfully above that figure, the SMSF path is worth a serious look. If it comes in close, the platform may be earning its keep, especially if you value having someone else manage the paperwork for you. Let me walk through a real example. Mark is 62, has $450,000 in super, and wants to hold ASX shares and a term deposit without doing the SMSF compliance work himself. His industry fund currently charges around 0.7%. A platform quote comes back at 0.5% admin plus zero, 8% in advisor fees, which lands at $5,850 a year once trading costs are added in. A lean SMSF running the same simple portfolio would cost him around $2,000 a year. That is a $3,850 gap every single year for holding largely the same investments. That is enough for a proper holiday, year after year, just for choosing a different structure to hold the same money. None of this means one option is universally right. It means the choice between an industry fund, a platform, and an SMSF should match your balance, your comfort with paperwork, and the actual number once every fee is added up, honestly, not whichever option happened to be pitched to you first. Run the numbers for your own balance before you decide anything, because the answer changes depending on where you sit. This is not a once-off exercise either. Balances grow, fee schedules change, and an arrangement that made sense at $300,000 can look very different once you cross $600,000 or $700,000. It is worth running these same 3 steps again every couple of years, especially after a large contribution or a rollover, rather than assuming the deal you signed up for years ago is still the best one available to you today. So here is the whole thing in one breath. Know your total cost, not just the headline fee. Check the comparison page on the ATO's website for the basics. Then ask directly for the full fee schedule to see the rest. And if a simple industry fund turns out to be the cheapest, most honest answer for your balance, there is no shame in choosing simplicity. The goal was never to pick the most complicated option. It was always to keep more of your own money working for you. If you are heading into retirement and want to hold on to more of your super instead of handing it over in fees you never fully understood, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of hidden math most of the industry would rather you never look at closely. You have made it this far, and that already puts you ahead of most people who never ask this question at all. Pull out your own fee schedule, run the numbers honestly, and choose the structure that gives you peace of mind, not just the one that came with the best pitch. However this plays out for you, the point was never to make you feel behind. It was to hand you one plain question you can ask before your next statement arrives. So the choice sitting inside your super account is one you actually made, rather than one that simply happened to you.